I came with an hour video and 147 pages of carefully selected notes. I just went into the hall and I've condensed it down to this in the interest of time. So there you are. I'm retiring on June 30th, and I'm not going to use the mic because I'm used to talking loud and I would just blast everybody's ears with it. I'm retiring June 30th after 15 years at OSU, and I'm here today because on the one hand I've failed, and secondly, on the other hand, I'm lost. I failed because for 15 years I tried to get English moved into foreign languages where it belongs. So far, I haven't been successful and I'm having to retire without reaching my goal. Secondly, I went to the grocery late last night, an all-night grocery, for some snacks, knowing I had plenty of money because I could feel that familiar bulge in my left-hand pocket. When I got to the checkout counter, I pulled out my cell phone and tried to give it to the clerk. Modern times have overcome me, and I think I'm lost. I don't think I'll be able to catch up. When I first came here, one of the reasons I came was that there was no comprehensive plan by the university for engaging with the tribal communities in the state of Oregon, let alone anywhere else. I submit to you today that's still the case. There is no comprehensive plan. That's not to say there aren't some very good people who have engaged tribal people, have engaged at the local level, have engaged in traditional, environmental, or ecological, whichever one you want to follow, knowledge. That's not to say that isn't the case. Many have come and retired, not come, but have retired while I've been here. Hiram and Judy Lee, for example, in their very deep scientific work with the Umatilla. We've graduated some people who have gone on, not necessarily back to their tribes, but people like Frank Lake, Dr. Lake, doing work across the Northwest and down in California, and is a highly recognized and respected researcher. But I must tell you, that's not enough, at least in my opinion. I don't speak for any particular tribe. I'm mixed blood on both sides of my family. Blackfeet from Montana on my father's, and Powhatan from Virginia on my mother's. I don't speak for either one of those groups nor any other tribe. I was raised among Sacanfox and Pawnees and Otos in Oklahoma. I adhere more to their ways than any others. What's really notable about conferences like this is that they do move us forward. My fear last year was that we would have this wonderful gathering of good scientists from both sides of the aisle, as we like to say about Congress today. And we'd get together, and as the late Rupert Fusco, an activist, Coahia, as I remember, is that right, Frank? Coahia? In California, Rupert, I called Rupert and said, let's have a conference, Rupert. This was about 30 years ago. There was dead silence. He said, I'll be damned if I go to another conference. I said, why? He was long known as an activist, a scientist. He made his money in oil and gas exploration. He said, because we go to conferences and we talk about all these things and we decide all these wonderful theories and these wonderful ideas, we go away and nothing happens. And I'm tired of wasting my time. So what I see here is something that isn't a waste of time any longer. It's got some momentum. There is some movement. And so in the small amount of time that I am going to spend with you now, because I want you to get over to the dinner that the folks at the OSU powwow are having, which I think starts in about an hour. And the powwow then has been shifted to tonight, by the way. It starts at 7 p.m. What I really would like to share with you are a couple of ideas. And one of them is a reaction I had using a film from the Greenpeace, I believe. Finally did the film. And it's about the efforts in Kings County, Virginia, my mother's tribal home place. Same people. Now, hardscrabble land farmers a little bit, but mostly fishermen out of nearby rivers. The people in Kings County nearby, in the wealthy home section, out in the tidelands, wanted to create a reservoir, needed to back up the river. Backing up the river meant all of that salt water would eventually work its way up. It had to. There was no place for it to go. Studies showed that it would kill off a lot of the wildlife, and the eagles that nested nearby would move further away. A lot of the flora and fauna would be gone. But we had people with money who needed water, fresh water. And they needed to have that dam for some other reasons. And they didn't care too much about those poor folks living along the river, barely eking out a living, because money was driving the studies. And money is what drives the studies in universities all across the United States. That's not to damn the universities or the people who conduct the studies. I'll come back and do that later. But for the moment, let's talk about that, because in the environmental impact study that was done, they found that the small world of begonia, I wouldn't know one if it fell on me. A little tiny plant, about this big, at least that's the way it looked in the film, was growing along the river and was going to be exactly where that heavily saline water would eventually take over completely. The reaction to that study was, so what? The begonia is growing in the wrong place. Even my students who aren't scientists, or those who aren't, laugh at that part of the movie. The idea that another part of the natural world, because I always explain to them carefully, humans are but one puny part of the natural world, or at least so the old folks would always pray. We are puny. We're not worthy. There's a recognition that human beings had very limited knowledge. And so the students laughed at that, because here was a money-driven project, and this endangered, by the way, it was an endangered plant, apparently. And the reaction was, we don't care. It's growing in the wrong place. It always struck the students, as they would say to me, doesn't it strike you, Dr. Peters, that the begonia knows where to grow? And these other people are saying it doesn't know anything. They said it seems that the begonia knows a lot about where it's supposed to be. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there. Now, the problem I see isn't that we read a lot about different Indigenous Peoples worldviews. I've had the good fortune this year to be among the Maoris, among Comanches in Texas. I'll soon be among the Delawares in Oklahoma. And everyone pretty much says the same things, but they come from different perspectives about what they say. And earlier I heard someone remind us that we've got a lot of tribes, and that means we have a lot of histories that extend beyond the coming of people who needed to write down histories in order to make them valid. Histories that extend back to the beginnings of time. Histories that were passed on by word of mouth when you didn't need the written word to accurately record those things. And here comes the part, as somebody said earlier, wait for it, that allowed us to get from crawling out of caves onto the surface of the earth, crawling up out of the mud, forming as humankind among many other kinds. And doesn't it strike any of us that it's interesting we survived so long without written documents? How in the world did we do that? How did we invent snow goggles? How did we invent as humans? How did we invent the atlatl, the throwing arm, that arrived around the world at about the same time? Snowball. How many people went snowballing before spinning up? Well, somebody got it about what snow goggles meant. They've been around a long time, not invented by modern folks. So here we are, and we're the invention of oral tradition, not written tradition. That's just added some new layers to our being. We are the invention of oral tradition extending back to the beginnings of the world. Literally. That put us where we are today. And no matter who you are in this room, you come from that kind of a tradition. That is your background. Some peoples, some places in the world have just managed to beat it out of their descendants and convince everybody that if you still adhere to an indigenous tradition, you're primitive. You are not whole. You are not scientific. So here's my charge, because I vowed to stop about 10 minutes ago. And I still haven't looked at that little piece of paper. Here's my charge for a conference like this. This is great momentum. This needs to move forward. We need to see open minds on both sides of the aisle. We need to see minds that aren't tainted by romanticism about either Western science or indigenous science. One of the greatest ills to befall indigenous people was to be declared mystics in the natural world. What it meant was, I want to live, I want to eat, I'm going to pay attention to what's around me. That's what it meant. And there was a deep understanding, not mysticism, that carried people forward, that the rest of the natural world is terribly unforgiving. And if I make a mistake, I won't eat, and I very likely will die. That's how oral tradition carried people forward. Those are the things that made that knowledge valuable and brought us to where we are today in this college, in this university, and particularly for those of us sitting in this room. To have open minds, we need to come from a place of respect. Not just a mouth saying the word respect. Deep respect for all ways of thinking. But then on the other hand, isn't that really what science is supposed to be about? Isn't science a body of theories, and we constantly are supposed to test new data against those theories and discard them or alter them if they're not valid? What we've done for decades is dismiss indigenous science. It is science. It is science by the definition that scientists place on Western science. Same definition. Time to admit openly in venues like this that we are dealing with indeed deep understanding that needs to be accounted for. I'll give you one quick example. For years I heard the stories about the mountains walking in Northern California. Frank Smiley. Those stories were dismissed for different. Child's play. Tell those to kids to keep them quiet. Mountains walking. Well, what was it, 10 years ago? So, 10. Geologists finally decided they would corroborate those stories because they had discovered that over time, over millennia, the shifting plates in the earth gave the illusion, if you want to think of it that way, but it was real, that a mountain was walking across the landscape. It was a way of describing science. It was the description of what was a scientific observation that was lost on geologists for years, decades, because of the snootiness of the profession at the time. Not everybody, by any means, wouldn't let anybody admit that what indigenous people had observed under the same conditions for millennia was worth considering. So, respect, listening, but respect. Think of it as, a clock going around. Respect. If you have respect for all the natural world, get out of your skin, get out of your own ego. Then and only then can you form right thought. Only then, after I've achieved respect, can I start to think correctly about how I'm going to deal with issues. Once I can achieve right thought, then I can move into the position of taking right action. And once I can take right action, then and only then can I come to the place where I can expect, not demand, but only then can I come to the place where I can expect reciprocity. If I'm macabre and I get a permit to go whaling and I sweat, I go to sweat lodges. I sweat anything. Sweat lodges. If I go to sweat lodges for a year, if I fast, if I do pray, and I do all those things, and I go out with 6 other guys in a little boat and go whale hunting, very dangerous stuff. The preparation takes a year, at least, of preparation, but I've done the right things. And when the macaw several years ago had a whale swim away from them, and you could see it on CNN, but nobody seemed to notice what was going on. Whale swam away from this little hand-carved boat. Got out there further in the water, and suddenly it turned around. inexplicably, nothing was in its way. It turned around and swam back to the macaw. And they dispatched it. And they treated it in the right way. And the macaw, those of them who still believed in those things, said, we did it the right way. The spirit of that whale, here comes the reciprocity part, folks. Whether we believe it or not, whether you believe it or not, the macaw believed it. Those macaw in that boat believed it. They said, the spirit of that whale that came back and sacrificed itself to us to allow us to recapture our whaling tradition will now go and tell the other whales, when these guys come whaling again, take care of them. They're good people. They do the right things first. What I submit to you is it would have been just as easy for the macaw to go out after a year of doing the right things and not have gotten a whale. Here's the other part. They had 4 more permits. They could have taken 4 more whales. And the macaw said, we don't have time to go through this again now. We did it the right way. We have some whale we can deal with ceremonially. That's what it's all about. So if you have reciprocity in mind, you do those things not expecting that the result, here comes your ego, if you do, is going to come your way. You do it knowing you did the right thing. And you do the right thing over and over again until something from some place, some spirit, whoever your advisor is, I don't know, comes around and says, change the way you're doing that. Well, this didn't work right. And that's scientific, believe it or not, in my book. You change your methods because your theory is not proving out. But here's the macaw. What do you think they feel about that? They revived something they had abandoned voluntarily 75 years before because the whales had been hunted out by white whalers. And the macaw said, whales are our kin. We can't take whales when so few are left. And they gave it up voluntarily. So here I'm back to this room. Here's what I'm hoping I will see. I think I'm banned from campus for 3 years. I think that's the way my retirement is set up, something like that. So when I come back, here's what I hope I see. I hope I see more people in this conference from both sides of the aisle. I hope I hear about projects that people are entering into with open minds and sharing and accepting, not accepting, accepting data. Indigenous data. And understanding that there's some data indigenous people simply can't give up. That's part of that respect. Understanding that working together doesn't always mean you get everything you want. But if you work together, you very well may find that we can fill in a lot of gaps. And if you have another hour, I'll tell you about all the things we don't know about in science. We don't know why we have serial killers. We don't know about cures for things. We're looking to indigenous people now. Gee, kind of missed the boat on that. I hope I come back and I see that sort of an interchange. Thank you very much.